Welcome, everyone. We'll be waiting 2 to 3 minutes to get started as a courtesy to those who are still in the middle of connecting. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for being part of our community. Before we dive into the topic today, I have a few reminders. Please feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the IM window. Be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible. However, if you prefer, you can post your question anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter it. We've had a large number of people register for this webinar, and we're thrilled to see such interest, but it means we may not be able to answer every single question in real time. We will do our best, and we have several people standing by just to answer your questions, but I wanted to provide an additional mechanism just to ensure that everyone's webinar questions are answered. If you'll visit aka.ms/MCAS Q&A, and that's one of the links I posted there in the IM window, you'll see a post dedicated to webinar questions. We'll be reviewing the question transcript after this webinar, and we'll post further answers there. If you're listening to this after the fact as a recording, that's also a great place to ask your question. So feel free to reply to that post with any questions you have. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/MCAS recordings. We're also gathering up slide decks, and we'll post them there as well. While you're there, please join our community by visiting aka.ms/security community. That's the best way to ensure that you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. You'll be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, requesting features, giving feedback, reviewing our product roadmaps, attending in-person events, or joining webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them, so please join us. We have a great topic for you today. This is part 5 of a 6-part webinar series on Microsoft Cloud App Security, or MCAS for short. Throughout the series, we'll be walking you through all the major pillars of functionality, showing you how to deploy and configure each part. Today's focus will be on staying protected across all your apps by connecting third-party applications. Our presenter and MCAS expert is Johan Mallet. He's a senior program manager on our MCAS team and part of our Get to Production group. The focus of his role is to help our customers deploy and configure MCAS, so he has deep expertise in this topic. So with that, I'll hand it over to him. Johan?
Ryan, thank you so much for the introduction as usual. So as Ryan mentioned, today we will talk about how to integrate your favorite third-party applications into Microsoft Cloud App Security. As I'm sure you have joined some of our previous sessions, you're probably used to that slide. It's just a quick intro, but I want to remind those who just joined for the first time what MCAS is about. And MCAS is what we call a CASB, a Cloud Access Security Broker, and it has many pillars of features. Number one, identifying which unsanctioned apps are used in your environment, such as Twitter, Dropbox, things that should not be used in a professional case. Then you want to protect your sanctioned apps, such as Box, Salesforce, Azure, Office 365, etc. And then you also want to protect your cloud threats. So these are the main three pillars where MCAS will come into action. And today we will focus specifically on how to connect basically any application you would like to interface with Cloud App Security and to have some level of protection to your application and to its data. So we have a number of applications that are featured. You can see here a number of logos. Obviously, at the top of them, you have Office 365. And what we've noticed is that a lot of customers, when they see that this is a Microsoft product, the first thing they do is usually leverage Office 365, which is great. Of course, we have a perfect integration with our own product, but we also have an almost identical integration with several third-party products. Some of them listed here, and we even have more than that we are actually able to interface with. Now you may ask, how do we actually connect to those third-party applications? Different ways. Number one, the simplest way to connect your application is through API connectors. We have several applications that are featured and that have an API connector that we developed so that MCAS can connect directly to it, and it makes it for a very seamless integration and very simple to configure. Number two, conditional access app control. We had an entire session about conditional access app control, so I won't go too much in detail, but that's also a very, very good way to connect your applications to Cloud App Security. And because it doesn't depend on APIs that would be provided by the vendor, it gives us much more flexibility in terms of which application we are able to onboard here. We're also able to secure your applications against some malicious OAuth apps, or at least identifying which OAuth apps are in use in your environment, and then take the actions that are needed. We have a brand new feature coming up soon that we named simply Any App Support, and this is something we will discuss a bit more in detail today. But the idea is to be able to onboard to conditional access app control, literally any SAML application that interfaces with Azure AD. And this new feature also integrates with on-prem applications. You already have today the ability to integrate on-prem applications through the Azure AD app proxy to MCAS, and more features will be coming this way thanks to the Any App Support. First of all, diving a little bit deeper into all those different ways to connect applications, I wanted to take some time to talk about API connectors and conditional access app control. Here we have a little bit of a diagram showing how MCAS actually works and interface with your apps. Number one, I want to focus on the app connectors here. The idea of the app connector is that MCAS will be connected out of band to your application, which means that there is nothing between the user and the application. MCAS is connecting cloud to cloud to the application that you are protecting here. So for that type of integration, we have several featured apps. Obviously Office 365, but in terms of third party, we have Box, Dropbox, Salesforce, Okta, AWS. I'm probably forgetting also Google Drive, Google Suite, and ServiceNow. All of these can integrate very, very simply using API connectors. Another way, as I mentioned earlier, is conditional access app control. Conditional access app control acts as a reverse proxy. It builds on Azure AD conditional access and allows you to actually send the traffic for the applications that you like, for the circumstances that you like, to MCAS, so that MCAS will actually be able to proxy that traffic and control what is sent to the client. As of today, we support any SAML app, but it requires an onboarding phase, which means you let us know which applications you're interested in onboarding, and we will be able to do that for you. If you are using any of the applications that we currently have onboarded, such as Jira, ServiceNow, Concur, obviously Office, Box, Dropbox, then you could do that directly through there. So a lot of customers ask, what's the difference between those two ways to connect applications? Well, the idea is that for the app connector, you will have a complete out-of-band protection, which means that we are able to review any action that you are doing on those apps after the fact. It also helps us making actual modification on the cloud drives or on the cloud files when you actually give us your authorization, such as, for example, protecting files using AIP and having them stored on a cloud drive. Reverse proxy acts differently. It will intercept the traffic between the client and MCAS, and that allows you for very different interactions, such as blocking download, for example, blocking upload, or controlling some specific actions on some applications. On top of that, using API connectors, we are also able to provide some protection for your cloud platforms. We have a strong integration with Azure Security Center, where you're able to review some of the data that are in Azure Security Center directly from MCAS. And we're able to integrate with Azure, obviously, to have some to detect some anomalous admin behavior. We're also able to do exactly the same thing with Amazon Web Services, and we even have detections that are specific to Amazon Web Services, so that you are able to secure whichever cloud platform you are using through MCAS. Another way to protect you from risky third-party applications is the integration of OAuth app permissions. We're able to find out which applications are to monitor which applications your users have granted permissions. You can see an example here in this capture, but we are able to find out any kind of application that has OAuth rights to your environment. And based on that, you can decide that some will be allowed, some will be blocked, and you can create policies to do that automatically, either based on the application provider name or on the severity of the permissions that they are requesting. And as we discussed earlier, I wanted to bring today this new feature that we are introducing in the next few months, currently in private preview, called Any App Support. And the idea here is to leverage conditional access app control, the reverse proxy that I mentioned earlier, to actually be able to use any application that is authenticating through Azure AD. And this way you will, if you actually configure it simply to any application to redirect to Azure AD, you will have this beautiful onboarding screen. And by simply following the steps, you will be able to onboard the application, and it will be automatically proxied by MCAS, and will give you some control over what this application can do. We have a few screen captures here, but you will all agree that there is nothing better than a demo. So let me start by demonstrating how to simply connect a third-party application. And we're simply going to connect a box environment, a box tenant, to Microsoft Cloud App Security. And And we're going to be testing and connecting box. As you will see, here we are asked, do we want to actually grant those permission to Cloud App Security? And we will say yes, so that MCAS will automatically have access to connect to Box. And that is as simple as that. So most of the applications that we are able to connect are as fast as that, a few minutes, sometimes a bit more, specifically for G Suite, but all the others literally take about that time. So I'm going to close it here and show you the list of applications you can onboard through API connectors. And you can see Amazon Web Services, Box, Dropbox, G Suite, Azure, Okta, Salesforce, ServiceNow. All of these are very simple, and if you have any of these in your environment, I would strongly encourage that you connect them to Cloud App Security. What you will gain out of that is that you will have a seamless integration with all of the policies and all of the features of MCAS. So using that, you will benefit from all the threat detection policies that you have. And for anything that is related to file storage or file sharing applications, you will have the same file and information protection policies within your environment that you can leverage for Office 365, for Box, for G Suite, for Dropbox, and all of these will completely seamlessly integrate. Of course, if there are policies that you prefer to use only for one provider, you are perfectly able to do that. It's something that is configurable, but you will have a complete seamless integration here. It doesn't matter if the application is Microsoft or third party. It literally takes a few seconds to configure. Right now, it's still syncing up, of course, but if we come back at the end of the webinar and look at this capture, it will have some data started to populate. The second integration that I want to show you is Conditional Access App Control. For that, we'll use a separate environment that I have here. But you can see if we look in the connected applications and in Conditional Access App Control, we have a number of them. And all of these are actually integrated through that proxy that we discussed earlier. So how do you configure them to show up here so that you are able to apply session policies to them and control what the users are able to do in these applications? You have to start with Azure AD. And going to Azure AD, that's where we are here, you're able to configure conditional access policies. Some of them are already configured in this environment. I will show you a quick example. But here we have a specific user that we decided to always redirect to Conditional Access App Control. And by checking this box, all the traffic for that user is automatically redirected to MCAS. What it means is that you are then able to create session policies like that will allow you some of the features I'm going to show you right now. So through those session policies, you're able to control file upload or download. And for example, you can decide that you're going to block download specifically for that user if he is connecting from a non-compliant device. If you have more questions specifically regarding that feature, I would strongly encourage you to watch the recording of the webinars that we had specifically for that feature for Conditional Access App Control. Ryan has published the link directly in the chat window. And now you're wondering, okay, that's great. It seems that we can connect some applications to that, but what are the limit of applications? So as I mentioned earlier, so far in your environment in MCAS, we only have a limited set of applications that can work in this environment. And if you look again in the connected applications and in conditional access app control. Some applications do support it and are completely configured, and for some, you can see that we suggest that you request session control. The reason is that not all the apps are onboarded, and as of now, we made great efforts to onboard a number of higher profile applications, such as AWS, such as Atlassian Jira, such as Box, Dropbox, G Suite, but we're never going to get to all of them. There are way too many applications out there, and our goal is now to actually empower our users to do this onboarding on their own. Not only that, but if you have custom applications that you wrote and that are used only in your environment, you may also want to be able to onboard them in MCAS. And so for that, we also have another feature that I mentioned earlier called Any App Support. And I'm going to show you exactly how this works and how this integrates with Microsoft Cloud App Security. So first of all, let's go back to our favorite Azure AD Conditional Access page here. And we're looking at another policy that we pre-created, but used for on-prem apps using the Azure AD reverse proxy. Right now we have one application that we have included. It's a finance internal site, and we request that you connect using conditional access app control. So I'm going to connect to this application. This policy was just created. If I connect to this application that you can see here, I'm going to have a beautiful message that tells me, great, but the application needs to be onboarded. We can't go very far if we don't onboard the application and make it work, make it known to Azure AD, to conditional access app control, so that the application can be leveraged and used in MCAS. So following the steps here, I'm going to go back to Cloud App Security. And as we try to authenticate to this application once, the application is now showing up here. As you can see, my Finance on-prem general app. And if we just click on the side, so what I'm showing you here is actually private preview. You will not see it in your environment, but if this is something that you are willing to leverage, please get in touch with us. Ryan will put the appropriate links in the chat window, and this will be rolled out to production to all our users in the next few months. And so to onboard this application, all you have to do is click on Edit the application and check this box. You have to verify the settings here. I pre-checked them in our case, but the most important part is going to be to make sure that the proper domains are here and you are able to configure any IP address that would be relevant. And of course, enable to use conditional access app control. While I do that, we wait for the setting to be saved, and you can see now it doesn't say request session control, but session control has been enabled. We did it on our own. We didn't have to have Microsoft onboard the app for the end user. It's now done. It's a self-service onboarding as of now. So we need a few minutes for the results to actually populate. I'm going to try to click this again. It may be a bit too early, but we shall see that. It's actually not too early. So now the result we get is very, very different. We can see that the access to our finance on-prem application is monitored, but we're not asked to onboard the app. We just know that it works. I'm going to continue. And you can see here that the application has a suffix, which proves that it is currently being proxied by MCAS and the conditional access app control feature. This server is an on-prem server, not a joke, a real on-prem server that is in the basement of one of our teammates. And you can see that the application is proxied, and it will probably prevent us from doing a few things. So let's try to download this file. Their customer credit card numbers. That sounds interesting. If I try to download a copy, Oops, I'm blocked. So that's exactly the kind of result that we are expecting here. And as I said, there's a lot of other things you could do for to prevent the users from doing unauthorized actions with those applications. And today we just wanted to show you how to onboard basically any application. So we did it here for an on-prem application, but you could do it for any on-prem application or any SaaS application. Again, this is private preview. This will be released soon in the next few months. If you have any questions on that, we'll be happy to take them here in the chat window or discuss that more in the communities, just like Ryan mentioned. Okay, we're moving on to another feature that I want to show you that will help you to integrate to third-party applications. And it will be how to integrate and understand and detect OAuth applications in your environment. This is unfortunately a very unused feature of MCAS, but it's so powerful. All the customers that we have invited to actually use it love it, and they have a lot of great feedback on it. So I want to make sure that we take time to review this together and you are able to leverage it in your environment. So right now you can see when I clicked simply in the menu OAuth apps, the list of applications that are connected to, here in our case, to Office, but it could be the same for G Suite or Salesforce if you are also using applications that could be interfaced with those apps. And the list is quite big, so maybe we don't care about everything. Maybe we want to know only the high permission level. And if we use advanced settings, we will say that the publisher is not Microsoft. And we still have a few, I believe. Yes, we do. And you can see that some of them are actually having some very high permissions that they're leveraging. If we click, we will get a bit more details on the permissions here, for example. And based on that, you can decide that you want to create a policy. So now I have a policy that will alert me for every time an application is using high permissions and is not published by Microsoft. I can say that I want to allow myself to have some exceptions. And so I will say that is not approved, except if I have approved it. And then I can decide that I simply want to revoke the app on the fly. And by doing that, you will completely prevent your users from granting rights to those applications that require high permission levels. This is very important in terms of security. We have seen now a lot of applications that abuse from those. And we all know that when an application requests those rights, just like in Facebook, the users will just not look and will click, yes, I grant everything. So it is very important for the safety of your end users to have this type of policies. You don't necessarily have to revoke the app automatically. You could create, for example, a flow that will warn the users of any risk that he is exposing himself to, and that will help you improving your security posture. And I will not save this one. And with that said, I will open it for questions.
So one we've got here, Johan, is the OAuth app the OAuth app policy is not in private preview, correct?
No, the OAuth app policy is has been released a few months back, and we strongly recommend that every customer enable some of those policies to leverage those security features.
Okay, great. What impact does the features that you were showing have on OneDrive for Business Client Sync?
So anything that is related, so what we showed regarding conditional access app control will not impact the applications, the hard clients, such as the sync or any other app that you would use on your phone. These will not be protected at this level. What we recommend is that you ensure that those apps are only leveraged on secure device. And if you're on a non-secure device, you can completely block access to those applications. This is something we can actually do from MCAS directly. When it comes to API connectivity, then it's different. You can connect, of course, when you connect it, of course, Office 365 API connector, anything that you store on OneDrive, whether it is using the web app or using the FAT clients or the sync, will report to Cloud App Security, and the impact will be the same. If you created a policy, the policy will also apply to those files.
Okay, great. Someone mentions that when testing conditional access proxy with MCAS, they noticed that attempting to download a document, the session proxy is successful at stopping all the downloads. However, this doesn't work on the folder level. Is this something we're going to fix soon? So
if I understand correctly, you would like to prevent one full folder to be downloaded. This is not something that we can do as of today. We can check that out and keep that as a feedback. I am not aware.
One quick comment there. So depending on the specific application, we do have a private preview launched to actually at the folder level for SharePoint and OneDrive be able to control downloads. So if that's something that you're interested in, I can't actually see the comments in this chat window, but you're welcome to, Ryan, if you can drop my contact information, I'd be happy to get in touch with you if that's the use case.
Sure thing, I'll do that.
Thank you, Alex.
So another question here, is there a cost with connecting a third-party app to MCAS?
No, there is not. The cost is per, the way MCAS is licensed is per user. If you use only Office, or if you use Office and Dropbox and ServiceNow and Amazon Web Service, it's going to be the same cost.
Okay, great. Are there plans to make app control URL based? For example, if I only want to route one SharePoint Online site collection to MCAS instead of all SharePoint Online sites, will that be possible?
I will leave this one to Alex if he has a response for things that will be possible in the future.
So halfway, the application itself will have to be routed to conditional access app control. So we'll proxy the traffic, but we'll be able to control at a site level where you do and don't apply policies. So while we might proxy the entire application, you can be more granular about which folders you want to block download in or apply some kind of advanced controls or monitoring in. So that's the preview that I mentioned was in private preview for SharePoint and OneDrive specifically around downloads, but I'm happy to talk to you offline about other use cases, other applications, other types of controls that you'd like to apply that folder level granularity and logic to.
Okay, great, thank you. This may be kind of a related question here. Will the proxy only work via new MS URL? Could a user bypass this by going to the original application URL?
No, it's not going to work. If you try to do that, it will redirect you to the authentication page, and it will not bypass the proxy.
Great. Just to clarify, we cannot yet, as SaaS apps or reverse proxy app on-premise apps to MCAS?
So as of today, you can onboard your on-premise application, but you have to request it to be onboarded, which means it requires an action in the backend done by our engineering team. And if this is something you need today, please submit the request. There's a button that I can show you very quickly. Going back to the environment. But you can make the request and we will do it for you. You're not going to be able to onboard it at the second, just like we showed it today, but this is something you can do. So simply redirect the traffic using conditional access, and then you'll have this button, request session control. And if it is an on-prem app, we will be able to enable that.
Just to clarify that comment, Johan's totally right. any application that's not featured today, we onboard unless you're enrolled in the private preview that Johan walked through. So if you're enrolled in the private preview to onboard any application, then as long as your on-prem app is hosted via the application proxy in Azure AD, then you can onboard it through that private preview.
Okay, fantastic. While we give another moment for additional questions here, I'm going to post some of these links that I posted earlier, but I know we have a lot of folks who can't join until several minutes in the call, so they missed all that at the beginning. So if for some reason you don't have the rest of this series, of which there's only one more session left, you can find that here, aka.ms/MCAS webinar. If you're looking for the recordings, those are at this link right here, which is aka.ms/MCAS recordings. We're also gathering together all the slide decks to post them there. We get asked about that, and we will have them there by the end of the series, and hopefully even sooner than that for most of them. If you haven't checked out our Azure Information Protection webinar series, we've got a similar series going on for that. That can be found at aka.ms/AIP webinar. And of course, if you have not joined our community, you'll definitely want to do that. The link for that is this one, aka.ms/security community. That's where you can post any questions. It's great if you have you know, a very detailed or scenario specific question with a lot of nuance. It's really hard to communicate through an IM window like this if you need to post a screenshot or that sort of thing. That's a great place for those type of questions. You can do that specifically on the Q&A overflow that we've created, which is this one, aka.ms/MCAS Q&A, which we'll be watching for anything we've missed there. But if you also just want to do a regular post on the community, you're always free to do that. We're happy to address those at any time, of course. One more question, Johan. I know you work with a lot of customers, go on site with a lot of customers, and review their configurations, help them get all set up. Is there anything that jumps out at you as being kind of some of the most underutilized features that maybe people aren't obvious to people on their own and they don't necessarily figure out? One of the first things you change when you engage with a customer.
So one of the first questions I ask when I see that a customer is leveraging MCAS is not only are they using it with, it's very apropos for this session actually, but one of the questions is, are you guys using only Office 365 or also third-party apps? And very often, only Office 365 is leveraged because obviously we're Microsoft and we often have this perception of we're going to protect Microsoft products only. In MCAS, this is actually not the case, and we are very open to the world and trying to protect other applications. So one of the very underutilized feature is the fact that a lot of customers have third-party applications and for a variety of reasons are not protecting them using MCAS. As you saw, it took 5 minutes for us to protect Box and to connect the API connector to it. And by that, we already gained the benefits of all the threat detection policies, and we gained the benefits for all the file or information policies we created earlier. Another thing that is also important and that I see very, very underutilized is conditional access app control. It takes 5 more minutes, maybe 10 more minutes if one is not very familiar with Azure AD to onboard an app to connect an app to conditional access app control and start leveraging session policies. It's very, very simple to leverage, and we see that unfortunately very underutilized. Hence the idea of choosing this area of topic for this session.
Great, thank you. One other area that I think is worth revisiting real quick, because I think it's a common point of confusion. We get a lot of questions around it. Could you go back to that slide where you show the cloud-to-cloud connection and kind of the diagram of how?
Yes, indeed.
So one thing, kind of just to get real specific on this, if I'm understanding this correctly, you could have someone who is on their own personal laptop in a coffee shop going through Wi-Fi that is not controlled by the organization. So there's nothing in the chain they're controlling there until they get to, say, a company Salesforce site. And in this case, Cloud App Security can still broker access control and do all of that sort of thing.
Completely. That's the idea. We don't need any kind of forward proxy or any forward chaining to send data to MCAS. When using the app connector, the first part that you see here, the user will simply connect to his cloud app the way he usually does, and he will not ever see a change. It's just that in the back end, there is a cloud-to-cloud connectivity between the cloud apps and between MCAS through this app connector. The other way, still the same thing for the user. He can connect from a coffee shop from his personal device, and he will still be protected by MCAS. But here the idea is that we can, for when we use the reverse proxy, aka conditional access app control, we will intercept the traffic. MCAS will receive redirected traffic from the authentication provider, in our case Azure AD, and then this reverse proxy will send the traffic back to the application and back to the user, simply as a proxy.
Perfect. Yeah, I know that's something where when I first heard of CASBs, I just assumed they were all proxy based, and I was very, impressed to learn that we have this other capability. So I think that's worth re-emphasizing. Thanks for that. Another question here: for conditional access apps, can someone block access to a FAT client, for example, Outlook, if the device is not compliant?
Yes, we can. I can actually demo that for you very quickly. And I'm in the right environment. If I go to policies, create policy, and here I'm going to create an access policy. And you can select the type of apps that we're talking about. So, sorry, not app, but app type, client app. And we can say that this is for the browser. This policy will apply to the browser or to mobile and desktop. So here, if I say mobile and desktop, and the device is not compliant or domain join, I will block it. And this way, you're completely blocking any FAT clients that you have for this application. You can choose the app to be specific, of course. Let's say you want to do that with Box.
Perfect. Another question here for let's see, that one we already addressed. Any recommendations on how to make sure that the app doesn't allow local sign-ons as a way to bypass MCAS? And by local, they mean non-Azure Active Directory single sign-on.
So that really depends on how you configure your application, and that's really at the Active Directory, Azure Active Directory level. You want to make sure that if you don't provide any kind of other, sign-on option than just Azure AD, your users will not have other credentials and will not be able to connect to those apps. This is something that we've seen being done actually most of the time. Most customers will use only Azure AD to authenticate to their SaaS apps, so they have a full single sign-on, and that's what we'll recommend here. If you're using that, the users will have to go through Azure AD when they are going to their applications. And if they have to go through Azure AD, then they will go through the conditional access policies. And if you request it through MCAS, and therefore it cannot be bypassed. I mean, if you find a way, let us know. We'll be curious, but we haven't found one yet.
Any plans to add more control templates or any community repositories for common use cases?
So we do not have community repositories as of today, but we are constantly working on adding more controls to conditional access app control. We have some applications that are featured, such as Box, for example, for which we have more than just block download. We have much more features. You can block sharing, for example. You can have full read-only access if that's what you want, so that when a user connects from a non-managed device, he will have a read-only access as opposed to full read-write access when he's on his corporate device. These are the kind of things we have. We are working on adding more of these. I can't share more details of that about that as of now.
Great, thank you. We got another question here. For the block case that you showed, it says, I will get a message that I'm unable to see, and I will get a message. I'm unable to see that during testing. Could you show that message?
So I can show you the block message. I think I still have it open. I'm going to download the file again, and I'll show you the block message that you get here. So that's the download block message that you're going to get if you block download. If you meant blocking access, I won't be able to show you that in that environment. I don't have the FAT client installed in my environment, but you will. If it's a FAT client, you will not get the block message from the application itself. You will just, the application will simply not work.
Fantastic, thanks for that. Okay, with that, I think we've addressed all the questions that have come through. Thank you to Anisha and Alex for being around to answer questions. And of course, thank you to Johan for a compelling presentation. And thanks to all of you who have joined us today and been part of our community. We hope to see you for the final session next week.
Thank you all.